Hello there, it's the one and only, and once again we are back with another podcast with...
Crown Chaos?
I know. Alright, so in this video we're this time going to discuss whether or not the X-Wing, the T-65 version used during the Battle of Yavin and Return of the Jedi, is a good or a bad design. So, buddy, would you like to open up?
Yeah, I could start out with that it was manufactured by Incon Corporations, the T-65 X-Wing Starfighter model, which was classified as an assault starfighter, armed with 4 laser cannons and a proton torpedo launcher, with a pilot and an astromech droid. And as we could see, the 4 laser cannons could be modified or at least adjusted so they would connect at some distance. I think that could be adjusted depending on...
Yeah, depending on the targeting system. So they could kind of spin a little bit in order to not just fire completely straight, because otherwise...
you would miss your target.
Yes, and definitely that would be a really, really terrible thing in a dogfight, whereas if you were assaulting a Star Destroyer or a Corvette or something like that...
Yeah, or just a normal dogfight.
Yeah,
you could see in New Hope at the Battle of Yavin where Darth Vader was flying behind Luke's squadron, where he sat and adjusted on his targeting system all the time to get the right distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but one thing about his TIE Advanced X1, which is the full name of it, was the fact that its laser cannons in general are mounted a lot closer. They're right under the cockpit, just like in a normal TIE fighter, so they don't really have very much dispersion between them. There's a huge chance that you're going to hit with both laser blasts, which of course gives you the full possibility to maximize your fire output.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that when he adjusted it, it was to be sure, well, he has the distance now, so he can hit right. With both lasers, of course.
Mm-hmm. Whereas usually it's something different with the X-Wing, because at least in the old Rogue Squadron 3D game from 1998 or 1999, whenever you flew an X-Wing, it always fired its cannons separately. So, for example, top right, bottom left, top left, bottom right.
But there's also a setting you can set in the X-Wing. It can be adjusted to fire single, dual, or quadruple.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, so you could decide, well, fire 1 cannon at a time, or 2, then they were from what is called bottom left and top right. Or the other way around, maybe, I'm not sure. And then you could, of course, fire all 4 at once.
Yeah, which is what I think actually is what happens in the new Battlefront 2 game, but that's another story.
I'm not sure.
So, is the X-Wing actually a good or a terrible design? Well, that very much depends. I mean, it was the go-to starfighter for the Rebel Alliance, and when we actually look at it, it pretty much beat the crap out of a TIE fighter and sometimes even the TIE Interceptor.
Yeah. Well, I would think the TIE Defender is a better match for the X-Wing.
It is. I mean, already the TIE Interceptor was actually made because it could outmaneuver and fly faster than the X-Wing. So,
but still the same armor and no life support, no armor, and no shielding.
Indeed, but it still had twice the firepower.
Yeah, because it had 4 cannons in its wings, and then it still had the chin mounts from the normal TIE fighter. But yeah, I would also say that the X-Wing is better because it has shield.
Yeah.
It's quite good armored. Has good firepower because it has 4 cannons, and of course it has proton torpedoes that we saw in when it destroyed the Death Star.
Yeah.
Actually, both Death Stars.
Yeah, I was just about to say it. Twice.
Yeah, twice.
So one could definitely argue it's a great fighter, but it also does have its drawbacks, because the fighter in itself was pretty big. It's a pretty big target. However, I would say the way it is designed means that its very long nose in itself is very narrow, so it kind of
makes up for it.
Yeah, it kind of makes up for the big design, and the way its wings are very thin, or very visible when for example it goes up or down.
But that's where you can also reduce the size thanks to the X-foil, where it could clamp its 4 wings together. That is also required for it to jump hyperspace.
Yeah. I mean, folding out its S-foil were basically
that's
it configuring mode. To
attack mode.
Yeah, to a fighting position.
Yeah, where the other was more for cruising.
Yeah, for example.
I think it says also that the first models of the X-wing were built so that when they have their S-foils together, they couldn't fire. A safety measure also.
Yeah, that may make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then but in later models it was suggested that it also could fire in S-foiled mode.
Ah. Yeah, well, maybe in the beginning because the cannons might be overheating if they're too close to each other. I don't know.
Me neither. But that's just what the good old Wikipedia says.
Well then, who can argue with that?
Yeah.
So, the X-wing in general, I mean, it's I would say it's a very, very well-versed ship in every respect. It has great firepower, it has great maneuverability, it has great speed, and it has great both armor and shielding.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming the shield's not locked in the front position and you get assaulted from behind, that is. We all saw how that went during the Battle of Yavin.
Yeah, one crashed down, or multiple.
Yeah, and a few were shot down.
Yeah, but of course that also depends on the pilot, I would say.
Yes, of course. And some of them also depended on the technology they had available at the time.
Yeah. Also, one thing that was great about the X-wing was that I can't remember what it was called, but one of the land speeders for civilian use was also made by Incon Corporation, the same that designed and built the X-wing. Had the same controls, so the pilots could actually be trained in a normal civilian airspeeder to fly the X-wing.
It may actually be the what's it called, the T-47 landspeeder, the one they're using on Hoth.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure. I will just take a look to see if I can find it.
So, but the funny thing about the X-wing is also that it doesn't matter what you actually use it for. It's good for everything. It's basically the same. You can in some way compare it to a Venator class destroyer, for example. The fact that it's really good at everything, but it's the best at nothing. It's a great jack of all trades ship. I mean, if there is something you really lack, or if there's something you really need, worst case scenario, if for example you need to lay out some really heavy firepower but you don't have some B-wings or Y-wings available, you can always count on the X-wing to a certain degree that in the end it will get the job done. But apart from that, it's very, I mean, personally I think it's a great design. But you could say that one of its flaws were definitely that during the Battle of Yavin and a few years after, when the TIE Interceptors were really in action, you could say that the X-wing were kind of starting to show its faults. You could kind of see that it was starting to show that it was maybe not the most top-notch fighter anymore, because the TIE Interceptor did on many occasions actually they did take it down because they could outmaneuver it and they could run away from it if they were on the losing side. So
yeah, but that's also because TIE Interceptor is, as in name, an interceptor.
Indeed. And it couldn't be used for any bombing or anything. It could be used maybe for some strafing runs, and it could be used for, well, definitely dogfighting, but
There I had to disagree. It could be used for bombing run. You could switch out the the proton torpedo launcher bay for bomber base.
Doesn't have proton torpedoes, does it?
Yeah, the X-wing has proton torpedo
yeah,
launchers.
but I was talking about the TIE Interceptor.
Ah, sorry, I've misunderstood.
So, but apart from that, TIE Interceptor was great for strafing runs and was great for dogfighting and definitely hunting down slower moving ships like the X-wing and the Y-wing. But, well, you could say that once the A-wings came out, the TIE Interceptor once again drew the short straw, because if you notice, many of the tactics that were employed by the Rebel Alliance and later New Republic, the A-wings and X-wings were always working together. Oh yeah, the T-16 Skyhopper. Oh yeah, that maybe explained why Luke was so great at actually flying an X-wing the first time.
Yeah, because he flew around in his Skyhopper and shot womp rats. Was it?
Yeah, that was his T-16 Landspeeder, but still. But then again, he also crashed in his T-16. Anyway. So.
But also one thing that that made the X-wing really great was its sockets for an R2 unit, or any astromech droid actually. Because it could help with navigation, it could make minor repairs, of course, not major. As we could see, R2-D2 was trying to help Luke as much as he could when he was hit once.
Yeah.
It tried to repair, and I am also pretty sure it managed to fix it.
Yeah, it was the stabilizer that had broken loose, and R2 did manage to do something about it, I think.
Yeah, until he was shot at the head.
He didn't take too kindly to that battle.
Oh, but at least he was repaired.
Yeah.
But
It's
also,
not the first time. It's the second time in that movie he gets shot alone.
That's true. But the first time he got destroyed.
Disabled.
Yeah, disabled. I would say he was disabled first, and the second one was more blown up. He was not totally destroyed.
Oh, he wasn't total, but it was close.
Yeah.
I mean, Vader did pretty hard on him. And that was even his old friend.
Actually, his own droid.
Yeah.
Well, that's another story.
Yeah.
But, well, also, all the other later models, they were modified to use R2 or any R droid, actually.
Yeah.
I think the last series was made for the R8 unit, or the R9.
Yeah.
I'm not pretty sure about it.
Not completely out of the question.
Well, I can't remember it.
Me neither.
But, yeah, it was used for the R series at least. Well, the R series is the most popular astromech droid through the series. You could just see if we look into some of the novels and that, when the E-Wing showed up, the successor, or the supposed successor to the X-Wing, it used was it an R9 or R8? I can't remember the number.
I think it was actually an R7. Per
R7.
standard.
Yeah.
Per standard, and then later configurations were modified to take the older R2 units, for example.
Yeah, or R3, R4.
Which also made them a bit cheaper in the end, because this R7 or 9 series of droids, they were really expensive.
And they were only manufactured for the E-Wing.
Yeah, exactly. So you could call that both bad or good, but then again, the R7 units were the fastest calculating droids out there on the market at the time.
Of course.
I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but they would put R2-D2 to shame, in a way.
Yeah,
but then again, many people won't accept it because R2 is R2 and he's just awesome the way he is.
He's also protected by plot shield.
That too. Plot armor, once again.
Always ruins the fun in the movie sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But
Tell me about
we
it.
also have to see R2-D2 lived a really, really long life.
Yeah.
When was he was used in episode 1? For the first time, we could say. And he probably was stationed there for a few years also on Naboo. I think you can read it on his biography or something.
Probably.
If you look into the legends, which I call canon.
But that's, I mean, what we see as canon, what we see as legend, that's a matter of debate. We can have that in the comments.
Yeah.
Now, apart from that, what other things do you have to say about the X-Wing and its combat abilities and defensive capabilities in general?
Well, I would say it's one of the better fighters in the Star Wars universe. Of course, you could maybe, if we go into a longer timeline, you probably can outmatch it with some Imperial ships maybe. Or
TIE Defender, maybe E-Wing for the New Republic.
Or maybe the TIE Phantom.
Oh yeah.
Because this is a cloak ship.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. We could also take the San Consortium with their Star Viper.
The Star Vipers, they were actually, I would argue that they were actually not as good as they're hyped to be, because they're very narrow, sure, but they have a huge profile. Just like the TIE fighters, they have a huge profile and they can be targeted so easily.
Yeah, you could just take the sight from a TIE fighter. It's just a big, what is it called, shooting.
Basically.
It's just a big target.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, but still, then we would be back to the Empire's ships. But also, we could also look at the New Republic ships from Legends, such as the K-Wing, the E-Wing, or the newer models of X-Wing at that point. Of course, they would outmatch the normal X-Wing, because they are just upgrades.
Oh yeah.
But that's also why the X-Wing was so great, because it was just upgraded all the time.
Yeah, it was a really versatile ship. I mean, if there was no other ship that could get the job done, you could pretty much always count on an X-Wing to do it in the end.
You can just look at Rogue Squadron. They used almost on all their mission, except that they needed a special craft, they used the X-Wing.
Yeah.
Because it was so versatile.
Yeah.
And it's fast. Really fast. Because, well, and also, if you run into a problem, you have 4 engines to rely on.
Oh yes, you do.
So if one goes down, of course you will lose some speed, but you will still be able to fly. And what is it? A TIE fighter has 2 ion?
Yeah. Twin ion engine is actually, TIE actually stands for twin ion engine.
Yeah. But yeah, well, you don't even have to hit the engines before they blow up.
Oh. But then a TIE, once again, was only designed as an escape pod in itself, so in case its wings were actually shot into pieces or something, you could, assuming that the engines were not,
powered on anymore.
Assuming that the engines were not damaged, or that the ship itself was not damaged, or that its battery ran out for that matter, you could basically just fly around in it indefinitely.
Yeah, that's also one thing that makes the X-Wing better than the TIE series, at least. That is life support systems.
Oh yeah.
You don't need to, like the TIE fighters, they always have to wear a mask. Because they don't get any oxygen or anything. They get that through their mask or their armor. And well, the X-Wing can also hold consumables for
1 week, according to our main source. It can hold consumables for a week, but it can be extended with outer pods hanging on the ship, which once again the TIE fighter, or in general the Imperial fighters, they lack it. And it doesn't matter if it's a TIE fighter, interceptor, or bomber, or even the TIE droid. Granted, it doesn't really need anything but
energy.
Yeah, but then again, it gets it from its solar panels with big wings.
But also, that's also one thing we can see with when Luke crashes on Dagobah and his ship gets stuck. Well, he has supplies with him for both recharging R2 actually, which I think also is a heat source.
Yes.
And then he has some food, of course. I don't see that he has what is it called, the sleeping bag.
No, but I think once again he could use his X-wing for that, because remember, the cockpit itself, if it can keep you breathing in space, then it can definitely keep you breathing underwater.
Definitely. But of course it sank.
Oh yeah, but I really don't think he would get wet, even if he still sat in his X-wing with the cockpit closed.
No.
I mean, sure, he would of course get wet and probably have the cockpit flooded if he tried to open it, which would probably be impossible at the time, because water's heavy. But it's a bit, I think the X-Wing is a really great ship. Definitely one of my favorite fighters.
It is really one really great ship. Yeah, actually I found some source here, which says which was added for the X-Wing actually, of weapon systems. First of all, single fire, where each cannon fired individually, which we discussed.
Yeah.
And dual fires, where two cannons in opposite positions paired up and pairs fired alternatively. And the quad fire, of course, where all four fires. And then a stutter fire, where many underpowered beams were fired in rapid succession, so like a machine gun.
Well, that might actually be very useful in some way.
Yeah, but that is in one of the really late models, because it is during the Yuuzhan Vong War. So that is what, 25?
Yeah, 25 to 29 ABY, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So there we can see it has been upgraded during the time.
It has. It has like 10 versions of it in total.
Yeah, something like that.
We're completely out of the picture, actually.
Yeah, that also one thing, the thing that the X-Wing has a hyperdrive makes it really versatile, while the Rebellion could use it for hit and run tactics and attack convoys of the Empire.
Exactly.
Where the Empire always needed a carrier for their TIE fighters and TIE interceptors, TIE Bomber. It was only the TIE Phantom and the TIE Defender.
And TIE Series X1.
Yeah, X1, yeah.
The Advanced, as it's also referred to, which is the one Darth Vader flies around in.
Yeah, but they were only produced in limited number.
They were, but so were the TIE Defenders and Phantoms.
That's correct. I think the Phantom, they got shut down because their production facility got destroyed and they ran out of rhodanium, or what is it called? I can't remember, for cloaking. It's a material they use for cloaking.
Yeah, and the TIE Defenders were also only produced in limited numbers because first of all, they were expensive, and second of all, whenever a pilot was actually fit to fly it, he had to have survived at least 10 missions in a TIE Interceptor.
Yep. And where the TIE pilot had to survive 10 battles to get into the TIE Interceptor, so actually 20 missions in total.
Touché. But yeah. The X-Wing was also capable of accelerating with 3,700 Gs, and a normal price for a new one was 149.909. 999. So 1 credit below 150,000 basically. And you could get a used one for an approximate of 90,000 credits.
Yeah, they were not that expensive when they were used, at least. But also the Incon Corporation's design team for the X-Wing jumped over to the Rebellion. When they got the first batch of fighters, I think that was 4 or 5, I can't remember how many they stole in the beginning.
According to Star Wars Empire at War, the PC game from 2005...
It was 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4. But well, when they got the design team, well, what was the problem? Well, they need production facilities to produce the fighter.
Yeah.
Well, that's also when we go to the A-Wing, that was the same problem. It was made from really cheap parts, but really good.
Yes, it was.
I think the X-Wing is maybe higher quality, but maybe also took quite some time to build because they are sturdy ships.
They're very sturdy ships, but then again, I mean, what's the most... we actually spoke about this earlier today, some hours ago. What's the most expensive thing to do? Having the technology and just be able to build more of what you already have. You have the molds and everything for the models that you need to put together, because basically building a ship or building anything, just like a Lego set, it's just one big puzzle in the end. So what is more expensive? Keeping up production and producing more and more and more, or only producing a few but constantly doing more research in how to improve the current design? Yeah. And that is definitely the research.
Yeah, you could see like the TIE Fighter, it was built off of the V-Wing from the Clone Wars.
Yeah. The V-Wing was a kind of predecessor.
Yeah, well, after they have designed the TIE Fighter, they just mass-produced it until they finally saw that the TIE Fighter could not match the X-Wing. Then they built the Interceptor.
But then again, the Rebels came up with the RC-1 A-Wing, and then, well, we all know how that went.
Yeah, and then
19-kilometer Superstar Destroyer.
Yep. Well, that did not go well, at least for the Empire. But, well, I would also say so, well, if we look more into the later, either canon or non-canon, whatever you like, they designed better ships later on.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, sure, the E-Wing was supposed to replace the X-Wing, and eventually it pretty much did. It never did completely, but it pretty much did.
I would say it more supplemented it.
Yeah, but it was, basically an E-Wing was kind of a mix between an A-Wing and an X-Wing.
Yeah.
Because it had the best of both.
Yeah, good basically. Firepower and hard, sturdy armor and shielding from the X-Wing and the speed from the A-Wing.
Yeah.
And rapid fire.
Yes, exactly. I mean, yes, it only had 3 guns over 4 on the X-Wing, but then again, if it wasn't basically a mix of the X and the A-Wing, then it also makes sense. And again, the A-Wing also had only 2 light laser cannons, but it had concussion missiles.
Well, it was rapid firing cannons.
It was.
And they were good enough for taking out the TIE series, because at least the first 2, because they had no shielding.
TIE Bomber 2.
Yeah, they're free then.
But
I forgot the bomber.
But also just the fact that if you look at it, the X-Wing was basically just excelling in pretty much everything. I mean, it wasn't the best at anything, but it was good at everything. Like, it was the best. I would probably argue that it was the best jack-of-all-trades ship that you could probably have in the Star Wars universe. Especially when the later upgrades came out, which really gave it a boost in performance. And that was on every front.
Yeah, because, well, you can see so that the New Republic didn't give up on the X-Wing. They just kept it because, well, first of all, in the first few years after the Battle of Endor, they of course didn't have the full production capability yet because the Empire still controlled many worlds. One of the only real, or 2 of the only real construction yards that they actually had during the time of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi was the Mon Calamari shipyards, which, granted, they were huge, but they didn't want to produce other ships. They only wanted to produce their own. Unique.
And then, of course, there were Sullust, which was heavily oppressed by the Empire. So, of course, they were happy when the rebels freed them there.
Yeah, and then they freed more and more shipyards. And then, of course, the production could then be turned up.
Yes, exactly.
And then they still kept the X-Wing going until the design for the E-Wing and what was the other called? The V-Wing? The Defender fighter.
Oh yeah, it is called Defender.
Yeah, Defender, yeah. And then the K-Wing, of course, which was a replacement for the B-Wing and the Y-Wing. And that was a really good ship.
Oh, the K-Wing, no doubt. But so was the E-Wing. I mean, the E-Wing was supposed to be the new assault fighter and interceptor, whereas the other one was supposed to be the assault fighter and bomber.
Assault fighter bomber, yeah. Well, and the E-Wing, yeah, it did At some point, because in the beginning it had so many failures.
It was constantly malfunctioning. Either it was the engines, then it was the firepower, then it overheated.
And then the asteroid were too expensive or didn't work.
So whenever you actually needed to get a job done and you were uncertain of what ship to take, your go-to option, at least in the Rebellion, would be the X-Wing.
And also the few first years of the New Republic.
Yeah.
But well, you can also see it on many, like if you play Thrawn's Revenge for Empire Warforce of Corruption, you can also see in the few first years they still use the X-Wing until they get into the later ships.
Mm-hmm. And if you're wondering what this Thrawn's Revenge mod is named, if you're trying to look for it, it's also referred to as Imperial Civil War, and you find it on moddb.com.
Probably also Steam yet now. They have a workshop for Empire Warforce of Corruption now.
Nice.
So you can also get it from the Steam workshop.
Nice.
Meteor Mods has gone through that also. Republic it was also there.
Nice.
But yeah, they used the X-Wing for until is it Era 3? I think.
Yeah, something like it.
Which
it still comes out in Era 5 if you have Golan stations.
Yeah, of course.
But in general, you could say that the X-Wing itself, your go-to option, I would argue the best starfighter in Star Wars, because it's tried, it's tested, it's proven, and it's really done whatever it could, and it's never let its pilot down.
No.
I mean, it's always just you can basically compare it to an AK-47 rifle today.
Yeah.
Basic maintenance, and it just works, and it works every time. It's reliable, and you basically cannot ruin it unless you really, really want to.
Yeah.
And then again, I would also say that the X-Wing looks really good too. It's a beautiful fighter.
It is. It has really nice, what's it called, design and aerodynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Which also makes it good in the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it could fly with about 1,000 kilometers an hour in atmosphere, so that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, that's pretty standard for fighters. Actually, 1,050 kilometers an hour, or higher speeds possible with deflector shields on, which would probably bring it to maybe 1,300, 1,350 with deflectors on. So yeah. And then again, if I didn't have deflectors on, I would be pretty angry if all of a sudden my paint on the X-Wing was scratched because I flew into a bird. But yeah.
But also, well, you can see that the X-Wing actually started out with the normal T-65 X-Wing starfighter, and then it ended by the XJ7 model, which is used by Luke. In his by his Academy of Jedi's in the Legends.
I actually thought it was the Z95 Headhunter. At least that's what you see in Jedi Knight Academy.
No, well, it says here that the XJ7 would be the last used.
Yeah.
But I think they were also manufactured in a low amount, maybe. Because it is the last of its series. And of course, you also have to look at when does the time span end in Star Wars. Well, it goes up to the Legacy era.
Yeah, and basically after that,
it just cuts.
Yeah, and there is no more, and it's limited as to how much information there is about the Star Wars universe 20,000 years before the Republic, or at least 20,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. So
yeah, well, I think the source we can trail back the most is of course the what is it called, the Jedi Knight game, Old Republic.
Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, Knights of the Old Republic.
Well, at least that's the
furthest back I can.
Yeah, the farthest back visual source that we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
After that, we have books and comics and such.
Yeah, and maybe some small history holocrons of that in few games.
But yeah, well, I
think we can conclude X-Wing perfect design actually.
Not perfect, but
okay.
It's definitely the best at what it does, and what it does is basically everything.
Yeah, good multi-purpose.
It's a great multi-purpose fighter. It's there, and it will get the job done.
It will.
Though you probably need to think about what you're doing, but it will get the job done.
Yeah. so that you'll not crash through a Superstar Destroyer bridge.
For example, then again, that was an A-wing.
Still, could have happened with an X-wing.
Yeah. Though the A-wing did have the advantage that it could outrun point defense cannons, which the X-wing actually struggled with. You even see that in Return of the Jedi, just before the A-wing crashes into the bridge.
Yeah, an X-wing gets destroyed just behind it.
Mm-hmm. So, well then, I think that was it for ours. Do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Well then, may the Force be with you all. Thank you for watching and listening to our rambling once again. Except that you're rambling the most.
Oh, shut up.
Anyway, may the Force be with you all, and have a great day, night, evening, morning. Well, wherever you are. Yeah, wherever you are in the galaxy. So, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.